No one disputes the fact that the oil and gas sector is the backbone of the national economy. This explains why the ministry, which is under the direct supervision of Mr. President himself, Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR, continues to either make or attract the headlines in the continuing effort to take Nigerian oil and gas to an enviable position among modern MDAs. Taking a look at the various parastatals under the Federal Ministry of Petroleum Resources, the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, pops up as, and we quote, an integrated oil and gas company engaged in adding value to the nation's hydrocarbon resources for the benefit of all Nigerians and other stakeholders. The statement casts a simple mentality about the activities of an organization whose existence practically defines an incontrovertible fact of Nigeria's economic life. Indeed, the mission statement of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, may be brief and straight to the point. Still, no one is likely to question the fact that it represents the huge yearning of a company that is fully aware of its equally huge obligation to a populous country, totally committed to raising the standard of living of its citizenry by maximizing benefits from an abundant gift of hydrocarbons.
You're welcome to a fresh edition of your program, Towards a Greater Nigeria. And today we're looking at the activities, plans, policy direction of a conglomerate that is contributing its quota towards national development. I'm talking of NNPC. And sitting atop here is a gentleman that you would describe as not just dynamic, but resourceful, purposeful, and of course, goal-oriented. By the time I'm done, you'll get to see what I mean by all this description. I don't easily give it if you don't have it. So I remain your anchor on Motayo Motor Show at NNPC with the new leadership of Mekanti Barrow. It is not business as usual. So the impression of the old NNPC that a lot of us have had, there you get money easily, there's corruption, there's bribery, there's whatever, had gone with past administrations. Under Muhammadu Buhari's administration, no stone is left unturned. And so sit back, relax, and get to see what we've got to offer you today on Towards a Greater Nigeria. I'll be talking with a nation builder in person of the Group Managing Director, NNPC, Dr. Mekanti Barrow. Dr. Barrow, you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
My very first question, GMD, NNPC we know was established to achieve specific mandates. Can you share these mandates with us and how this have been contributing towards development?
And NNPC was established as a corporation 1977, and the major purpose of NNPC is to participate in the all value chains of the oil and gas industry. And specifically, we participate right from exploration through to production and refining and marketing of petroleum products. Initially, NNPC also had a regulatory arm that was a department, that was the Department of Petroleum Resources. But during the structuring in the 80s, that was spinned up as a ministry arm. We also particularly look at sufficiency of petroleum products to the Nigerian populace, to the extent that we are called the supplier of last resort. Some of the strikes that we've done since we came back was to try and bring back NNPC back to its focus of seeing that we develop oil and gas, we increase reserves, we also increase producibility, and to ensure that there is product all over the country. This we've achieved largely. If I take you a little back to 2016, November, December, we promised it's going to be hitch-free, eluted period, and we delivered. There wasn't any fuel crisis. And this also we were determined to do that, but other factors, especially as it relates to marketers' activities, set in, which of course we have sufficient products, but because of the greed that is inherent, we were caught somehow, I would say, a little bit away from what we thought we could, because they had taken the propaganda machine quite quickly by emphasizing to people that there isn't product. But in the real sense, there is product.
The Nigerian oil industry continues to engage all that is required to give a nation intent on improving its standard of living good leverage to meet the aspirations of the citizens. The oil and gas sector of the Nigerian economy is committed to transforming the hydrocarbons into funds for government to fulfill the desires of the general citizenry for a better life. From the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR himself, to staff of the ministry on the most humble rungs of the ministry's administrative ladder, commitment to work has remained an abiding principle. Here's his Group Managing Director of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, Dr. Mekanti Baru.
When we came on board in July 2016, what was on the ground was that there was so much vandalism in the pipelines. There is also a lot of crude theft. To the extent that there were reported cases of almost 150,000 barrels per day for crude theft. This has significantly been curtailed, and what we even hear at the moment is less than 10,000 barrels per day in terms of possible bunkering activities. And we rose the production from the joint ventures from as little as 700,000 barrels per day to at the close of 2017, we had reached about 2.3 million barrels per day. This is including crude oil and condensates. And of course, the hiccups here and there, as I'm talking to you, our production is about 2.2 million barrels per day. So the efforts in terms of talking with our host communities to get understanding, to also talk to the youth that are in the Niger Delta, try and convince them and get them to understand that destruction is not the way to go. The way to do is what really are your interests, and we look at how best to meet it. And the government has also engaged the political leaders of the region and have tried to talk to them to understand the need for us to sustain production, because that way the whole is better than the half. Yes, and you look at even the activities of blowing the pipelines and the illegal refinery activities, they all destroy the environment almost permanently. And that's why the government is also putting a lot of effort to clean up the areas that are badly affected, starting with the Ogoni land. So all these we are doing. We are getting buy-in of the communities. We are working assiduously to ensure that production in terms of crude oil and condensates and gas continue, because gas also is a major issue that we found. There was always a collective supply of gas, and there isn't enough. And I'm happy to tell you, Doctor, that we have reached a point that even as I'm talking to you, we are supplying gas and the power sectors are not able to take the gas. because they talk about difficulties with transmission, they cannot rule out the power and all and so on and so on. But if you go back to the point that when we came, there was just about 600 million standard cubic of gas that is going daily. Now we are pushing out to the domestic a little over 1,400 million standard cubic feet of gas daily. And this is sufficient to generate from the gas sector alone almost 3,800 megawatts of electricity. Yes, and this we intend to contain and sustain. And in fact, we are also developing other gas projects and pipelines to ensure that we get sufficient gas to give us up to 10,000 megawatts by 2020. So these plans are on, and we're developing them steadily and smartly to ensuring that we achieve them within budget and also on time. So these are key areas that we are looking at, and they're all in line with our mandates.
Nigeria does not pretend for one moment about the place of energy from oil in efforts to keep turning the wheels of commerce and industry at a steady and ultimately improved speed. Oil and gas will remain the lifeline of the Nigerian economy for quite some time. One of the concerns of the general citizenry is when the country will become self-sufficient in terms of availability of refined petroleum products for use.
Well, GMD, I need to ask you a question that most Nigerians would have loved to ask if they see you one-on-one. They're so excited when they heard of President Buhari's administration talking about the resuscitation and rehabilitation of our refineries. What's the update?
Well, the refineries are so dear to Mr. President. They are one of his babies. If you recall, in the 70s, he's the one that took decision on building the refineries. He was petroleum minister at that time, in 77, 78, and they took those decisions. And so apart from the old Port Harcourt refinery at that time, we didn't have any other refinery. They took decision to build the Warri refinery, the Kaduna refinery, and of course also to build another 150,000 barrels per day refinery next to the old 65,000 barrels per day refinery at Port Harcourt. And not only that, to also debottleneck that oil refinery to go up to 80,000 barrels per day. And that is the incremental capacity that we've gotten, and the current capacity of the refinery is of 445,000 barrels per day. So when he came back, it's obvious that that is one of the areas that he is focused on. And his own thoughts is quite clear. Mr. President has talked to me severally. So that, look, if you put your refineries in order, a lot of issues relating to importation will be taken care of. Of course, he also knows that the increase in population and use of energy has also increased significantly. But nevertheless, it would have gone a long way, because at the consumptions that we were witnessing before September last year, obviously it would have, the refineries would have given us, if they are working 90% or 95%, they should be able to cover almost 65%. So 65% of our national requirements. So the only augmentation in terms of importation would have been somewhere about 35%, or at most 40%. So that is quite clear with Mr. President, and of course he is driving us to ensure that we rehabilitate the refineries. And if you have that understanding and you have that background, then obviously our own plan as management is to ensure that his dream of achieving at least 90% capacity is our priority, is our number one goal. Of course, if we do that, it will also require a lot of funding because of the situation that the refineries are. First of all, a lot of the instrumentation are obsolete. Some of the process units, you have better generations of process units that will give you less problems. There are issues of automation. There are issues of ensuring that you have the latest technology implanted. So obviously, the refurbishment of the refineries is a task that had to be done fairly diligently. And you also look at the paucity of funds from government. Government is not financing us for rehabilitating the refineries. So obviously, NNPC has to find its funds to do that. So while we are working on scoping the job to ensure that what needs to be done on each location, on each refinery, of course, the one that will have less could be the Port Harcourt refinery because it's the newest. Then, of course, Warri and Kaduna, they all have serious demands. And we also have the pipelines that are going to supply the crude oil to the refineries. We also have to look at them as all part of packages. Exactly. So the first thing was to scope the job. Second thing was to see the original refinery builders, because those you would have thought when you call them they will jump at it, but they've had bad experiences in the past where the government had of that day has said, give me what it takes to fix it, and once it gets it, it chickens out. So the situation goes back to what it was,
if not worse.
If not worse. So they've had that, so they are not interested. So we have to build confidence in them. We have to tell them that we are determined. Mr. President is backing us fully. We inform them that these are the programs we have, and they got convinced. So we got the original refineries builders on for each refinery to be willing and be committed to come and review whatever work program that we have, and also to accept to reconstruct these refineries using modern technology. And of course the scoping that we've done. And with the scoping we also did some costing. Then we had to look for the finance. And I'm happy that with the support of Mr. President we are able to work on the financing, and with the list of companies and entities that are willing to invest in the refurbishment of those refineries, not government money, their money, and of course we'll make arrangements for them to be able to be repaid from our processes, from the products that we might produce from these refineries. And they also, to ensure, because they're investing, they will give us one or two management staff that will work with us during the refurbishment, as well as the operations, early operations of the refineries until they recoup their investment. So you also have to plan when the refineries are completely out, who augments the products that they are going to bring in.
The creation of the Ministry of Petroleum Resources was necessitated by the need to develop and implement sound policies that will serve as a backbone for the rapid development of the then burgeoning oil and gas sector. For his part, the Minister of State in the Ministry of Petroleum Resources remains an incurable optimist and unrelenting pragmatist in his contributions to improving the sector. Hear him on some of the plans and actions undertaken to lift Nigerian oil and gas from the doldrums to decent heights.
There's something fundamentally wrong in the major national oil company being the one that supplies fuel to 180 million people. It's a non-starter. It's dead on arrival. So we need to find ways in which private marketers find enough incentive to go back into the market and do what they're best pleased to do. So that NNPC can focus on the more important business of being able to produce products and monitor the upstream sector for the country. We can go from there. We talked of policies. How do we put in some of the policies that have been discussed, never just perfected? We were able to bring out so far the petroleum policy, the gas policy, We're almost finalizing, or we'll finalize the fiscal policy, but we need to put that on a roadshow and discuss that with the stakeholders and be sure we're all aligned. We're working with the Assembly in terms of the governance PIGB, which has just been passed by both houses. There's still more to do, host communities, the fiscal bills and all that. So get the right policies so that the environment is predictable.
Here's the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry, Dr. Folashade Yemi Eson.
Specifically, we're also looking at how to reduce cost of production of crude. We know that once we're able to bring the costs down, we'll be able to attract more investments, and many other people will be able to come into oil and gas business. So we're looking at ways of doing that. We're looking at how companies can do a lot of cost sharing. All these things are things we're still working on, but very soon we'll bring out these novel ideas and we'll see how things calm down.
You're welcome back. And for those of you just joining us, I've been talking with the gentleman that sits atop of NNPC as a group managing director, a professional, we call him. He is a person of Dr. Mikanti Baru. I want to quickly take you to the PIGB, the bill itself, Petroleum Industry Governance Bill. Yes. It still has to do with the unbundling of NNPC. Yes. Can you tell us more about the facets of this?
We have the policy, the ministry, you have the regulatory, then of course you have the commercial, which is NNPC. And the intent of the PIGB is essentially for NNPC is for it to focus and transmute into a commercial entity that will participate in the oil and gas industry like any other commercial company. And it will also be removed from taking some of these quasi-responsibilities that are, at the moment, we drive some policy generation, we also drive some regulatory, when we see the vacuum, and we do it. For example, if you look at the formation of the Nigerian local content drive, NNPC saw the vacuum and saw the need, because we were saying that about 95% or more of the industry spend is always going outside the country. And as such, we now developed and started by having a division within NNPC that is focusing on Nigerian content. And from there, we further developed the various guidelines which we are implementing, and then combine these guidelines and form them into what could be a legislative document, and got a private member to sponsor it. And ultimately, that's what we're having now as the Nigerian Content Development and Monitoring Board that has. So these are some policies that happen within NNPC. We have problems of scarcity, sometimes price regulation, and once in a while NNPC is forced, because the regulator is not doing what it's supposed to do, NNPC is forced to go to the filling stations to ensure that the price is right. We also ensure that the volume is right. So these are not our functions. There are departments, regulators that do it, but we fall all into doing those things. We are supposed to be a commercial entity. However, here we are.
You're doing more than
well, it's much more, because we're involved with supply of products as a supplier of last resort. And that means if everybody decides not to participate in the supply chain, NNPC must participate, must make sure the product is there. So these are more or less things that are slightly political issues, policy issues for government to do. But we are the arm. So the PIGB will remove all these quasi-functions of NNPC and will make NNPC behave a purely commercial entity that will participate in the sector and will also deliver the necessary environment that is required and compete with other oil and gas companies in Nigeria and ensure for every sector that participates, it behaves like a commercial entity. In fact, the PIGB as perceived is looking at within 6 years of passing the law, NNPC's shares should be traded, at least 30% should be traded in the stock exchange. So you and me, God willing, will be there to also buy some shares into NNPC. And it will run purely as a commercial entity without any government interference. So that is the perception. But of course, if you are going to do all those, you have to make sure that the environment, regulatory environment, everything is brought to the same playing field.
Well, viewers, this is what we call it today. We still have lots of issues bothering on the activities, plans, programs of NNPC. GMD is ready, but we cannot bring you everything that's going on here within a 30 minutes or a 45 minutes package. We will discuss with the GMD on when we'll be able to do more of this enlightenment series so that you get to know more of what is going on here, to be able to appreciate the quantum of work that is going on and how you can collaborate, cooperate and support NNPC to servicing you better. I remain your uncle, Omotayo Omotosho. Thanks for joining us. The program is towards a greater Nigeria, and as I've often said, we don't leave it for the government alone to do. You and I have responsibilities and roles to play. Good evening, and we wish you a beautiful night rest.